Good morning. This morning I'm going to talk about Miller's chapter 21 about economic rents. I'm going to do this very briefly. I don't think these materials really merit a whole chapter, but I'll try to hit the highlights and I'll even try to make it a little bit interesting, about that much. Um, the idea of economic rents I don't think is real clear, so I will try to, make that a little better. So his definition, this is right from him: economic rent is the payment for the use of any resource over and above its opportunity cost, which I don't think conceptually helps to understand much. He talks about land. As we had mentioned, land is generally something in a fairly fixed supply, except we do have Abu Dhabi, which is man-made land, so it's not even that fixed. Or we talked about it in terms of being perfectly inelastic. That would be a fixed supply. Um, And then he goes on, spends a lot of time talking about the economic rents of labor and points to like celebrities, sports figures, actors, and singers and people like this who earn economic rents. Um, what he means there is that it's this the profit above its opportunity cost. So, like, what's his name, the basketball player, LeBron James. LeBron James earns a lot of money. I don't know how much. Say a lot of money due to his basketball skill. It is well above his next best opportunity. If there were no NBA ever, which right now there is no NBA with the shutdown for coronavirus, but if there were no NBA ever, it's very likely LeBron James would not be making anywhere near the money he currently is. He's well over his next opportunity cost and what he can make. That to us I don't find very useful, because he does make that money and there is basketball. A better way, I think, to get meaning out of economic rents, I think, is to think of it with this example. You might see a piece of land that is prime real estate. Like, you might say oceanfront land. Okay, let's set aside any climate change stuff, anything like that, whatever. Oceanfront land is something that people want really badly, right? The price tag's really high. So it would be naive to say, oh, if only I could get a piece of oceanfront land, I could be rich. I feel like it's the naivete is baked into that, because what's hard about getting that land is that the price is already reflective of that high value. There was a TV show in the 70s called The Beverly Hillbillies, and the Klempets, you might hear reference to that sometimes, was the family name. And I'm sure this is on a YouTube video. In the commercial or whatever, the trailer for the show, Judd Klempet, the father figure of the family, is out. I think he's shooting at a rabbit. Back in the days when shooting at things on TV was cool. And he took a shot at a rabbit. He hit the ground, and when he hit the ground, oil started coming out of the ground. So there's these hillbillies that were poor, and that was, this is what the show is about. And suddenly they strike oil on their property. Well, when the land was just plain land with no known value, it was valued at whatever it was per acre. When the oil was discovered under that land, we're having construction going on, fantastic. When the oil was discovered under that land, suddenly, whoosh, the value skyrocketed. Well, buying that land from the Klempets wouldn't necessarily make you or I wealthy at that point. The rents, the economic benefit of the discovery of oil, was already included in the price of the land pretty much as soon as it was discovered. that value above its opportunity cost, what it could otherwise be doing, those are the economic rents, and they're usually already factored into the price of something. Another very similar example, if you've seen the movie There Will Be Blood with Daniel Day-Lewis, you know, one of the best actors ever. If you don't want to spoil too much there, but he's an oil guy, and he knows how to look for oil back in the early 1900s, and he goes onto this farm, and he finds some people like the Klempets, and he's there with his son, and he offers to buy their farm from him because he's interested in pheasant hunting. And he tells the son, we're not going to pay them oil money, we're going to pay them pheasant money, because he knows that there's oil under that land that they do not know, and he wants to buy it at a low price so he can get the economic rents of what's really there. So these kinds of approaches, these are the things where economic rents are usually used, and I don't know that the author really explains that very well. And I don't know that it is, this concept is, as I say, I don't think it merits an entire chapter. So that's all I'm going to say about the economic rents part of it. The other part of it that is close to my heart, because my undergraduate degree is in finance, is about the financial look, the stuff related to finance and interest rates that are there. The first part of this, I don't think your author ever gives it the name that it deserves. This is called the Fisher equation, not the German spelling, I would say. The Fisher equation is this thing in your book that looks like this. Rn for the nominal interest rate. What that means is the stated interest rate. So when you and I go to the bank and we want to borrow for a mortgage right now, the stated interest rate for a mortgage is typically right now about 3%. That's the rate that they state to us if we're borrowing, or the rate that we could get paid if we're lending. Like if you buy U.S. Treasuries right now, I believe a 10-year bond is going to pay you about maybe, it might be 0.5% or something. I don't know. That's the stated rate. Let's not go in the extremes that are currently happening with the coronavirus. That's why that's so low. But if you put your money in a CD with Allied Bank, currently you probably would get a stated rate of 1%. Okay, that's all it is. It's just the rate you hear about. Well, we can break that into parts because there is inflation in our economy, the general rise in the level of prices. That's currently about 1% a year, probably at this moment. Pretty low, very low. Well, if you could get an instrument that paid you 1% and the inflation rate were 1%, what's the real rate of return you're getting on it? What's the real change in your buying power at the end of that time period? Well, that's R for real. Nominal is this N. R is for real. These bigger R's are the rates. So the nominal interest rate is equal to the real interest rate plus the inflation premium. If this was 1 and this was 1, you're not making any money. You're just preserving your wealth by buying that instrument. These are exceptional times. Interest rates and inflation are very low at present. More typical numbers would be you could get a bond that would pay you 5%. With typically inflation would be 3%, which means at the end of the term of the bond you would have made 2% as a real return, the increase in your buying power. That's the Fisher equation. We could rearrange these terms, of course, as well. In other words, I don't know that it's worth rewriting because the arithmetic is so simple. Rn minus I is equal to Rr, right? Just subtract the I from over there. So this is the Fisher equation. It's a nice thing to be aware of. I have, at times in my life, I want to share this because it may apply to some of you. I had student loans, which were, because they were subsidized, right? Half of them weren't collecting interest when I was in college, so effectively my borrowing rate was half even the nominal rate, because half of it wasn't even was interest free. The rate of that I was paying on that was 0, and the part that I was paying on was only like 2%. So my nominal rate on my student loans was really only about 1%. Well, inflation was a little hotter then; it was more like 3%. So in other words, my loans were going to get, all else held constant, my wages. If my wages were rising with inflation, my loans were going to get easier to pay by not paying them right away. So I didn't. Sometimes when I'd have extra cash,